Hello and welcome back. My name is Francesco de Misa, and here we have the second lesson of Python, inputs and conditionals. So, what is a conditional? A conditional is a series of statements that will simply be deciding what is output, whether it's a number, a string, or whatever. So, here we have an example. So, we have two numbers, number one and number two. And conditionals are defined by usually three different specific terms. These are if, and else. So here we have an example. If the number 2 is greater than the number 2, then print the number 2 minus the number 1. So it's basically asking whether this statement is true. And since we can see that that is not the case, then it will declare it as false. And the computer will simply move on to the next thing without printing out the number 2 minus the number 1. So when we move on, it's asking else if. So if that didn't work, then let's try this. The number 1 is greater than the number 2, which is again untrue. But if it was, it would print the number 1 minus the number 2. So neither of these work. So where do we go now? Well, we go down to else. And so this is basically saying if nothing works, nothing that we asked it to do works, then it'll just do this. And for what we have, we say for it to print none. So the basic format of an if statement can be easily understood if you recall flow charting. What we have is the if, and then a given situation, then an action will occur. If that doesn't work, then we move on to else if a different situation, then a different action would occur. And finally, if all else fails, then we go down to else, a different action would occur. By the way, this here with this hashtag, that is a commenting tool, which will mean that the program will not actually read it. It's called pseudocode. All right, inputs. So here we have this example where we have this variable x is equal to input what is your name blank. This is very important. So it's basically asking for your name. It'll print this out and then wait for the user to enter the name manually and hit enter. So for example, if one were to type in Michael after asked what is your name, and then you pressed enter, then the variable x would now be known as Michael. So something very important to note is that inputs always work with strings in their base form. So if you want to change it to an integer, so like if you want for a person to input a number, let's say 5, for example, you don't want it to be as a string though, you want it as a regular integer. Well, you would need to have, for example, variable whatever, let's say num, equal to int to define it as an integer, input, and then it would ask to type a number, let's say 5. So then it would print the num, which would be just the integer 5. That's all for the lesson 2 of Python. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video.